I'm Casey Claiborne, and thanks for coming to the Fox 7 Austin YouTube channel to check out this CrimeWatch YouTube exclusive. We're taking a look at some of the most talked about recent crime stories in the Austin area and around Texas. The Hays CISD superintendent says the fentanyl crisis must be treated with the same urgency as COVID or gun violence. This comes after a 17-year-old high school sophomore at Hays CISD died from a suspected fentanyl overdose, while 2 other teens died earlier this summer. This year, Kyle police responded to at least 16 fentanyl-related overdoses. 7 of them were deadly. They say many of these cases involve teenagers, leaving parents concerned. Fox 7 Austin's Meredith Aldis has the story.
3rd death in this school district, and that's alarming.
There's 3 kids out there. It's their parents' and family's worst day ever.
Kyle PD says they were teenagers. The age range they're responding to for overdoses more and more lately.
I'm highly concerned.
Gray has a family member who died from a fentanyl overdose last year. She says it was a shock and has a message for kids who may not realize what could happen.
Don't bend to peer pressure. Be aware of what you're picking up and putting in your body, because it's not all good and it could end in something that you weren't expecting, such as death, and leaving behind a loving family that's going to miss you forever.
City and school officials in Hays County want parents to have a conversation with their kids.
We're talking about children as young as 14 years old. So middle school parents, elementary school parents, begin to have those conversations as well. Even if you do not think that they're exposed to illegal drugs, you need to ask them.
He says be involved in your child's life, look in their rooms, and monitor their social media.
There are apps that are out there that drug dealers like to use to try to communicate the sale of their drugs.
The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration lab testing reveals 40% of pills with fentanyl contain a potentially lethal dose, and you wouldn't be able to see, taste, or smell it.
It could be a prescription-looking pill, as we find in most of these. A lot of these more recent cases have been a really light blue, M30 blue pill. They're supposed to look like Percocet or oxycodone. However, these are not made in a lawful pharmaceutical lab.
The CDC says synthetic opioid is 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times stronger than heroin. The only safe medication is a prescribed one dispensed by a licensed pharmacist.
An Austin bike shop manager says a rare bike is missing from their shop after a man took off with it during a test ride. The incident was caught on camera. Fox 7 Austin's Meredith Aldis also has this story.
A man dressed as a biker walked into Austin Tricyclist on Barton Springs Road Sunday afternoon.
He did seem like someone who rides bikes very, very often and had some kind of knowledge about what bikes are good for what. And kind of knew what he was looking for.
He had his eyes on a rare $5,200 gravel bike. The manager says they only received 3 this year.
This year only, and only made like this kind of bike. And so we'll not see any more of these beyond what we got this year.
Witzel says his employee took the customer upstairs, talked about the bike for a bit, then he wanted to take it for a test ride.
It's very common for us to let someone test ride a bike, even on the nicest ones, because you have to know how it feels.
He says usually they require the customer to give them an ID and credit card before hopping on the bike.
He was the one who offered the wallet. We weren't the ones who asked. So it was a real quick, just here you go and out the door kind of thing.
The contents in the wallet he gave them was fake.
When we realized he was gone, it was too late. The wallet was a credit card cut in half with the top sticking up, and I think that was about it.
Witzel says the man in the blue shirt is the one who took off with their bike, and they want it back.
If the guy could just come back and pay full sticker price, that would be great. But yes, we would love to have the bike back and be able to get it to someone who really is going to ride it and enjoy it.
Witzel says he's filed a police report, adding to the rising statistic of thefts from buildings. Austin PD reports they're up by 165% from last year.
It makes me feel a little less trustworthy of that random person coming in, but in general it doesn't deter me from being excited about bikes and getting new people on bikes.
Police are asking for help finding a suspect in connection to a homicide earlier this month. On the morning of August 9th, Austin police responded to a call about a shooting at a gas station on Olin Road. When officers got there, they found 2 victims shot. They were taken to the hospital where 72-year-old Antonio Castro later died. Police released surveillance video showing the suspect approaching someone behind the Citgo. The suspect is described as a Hispanic man in his 20s. If you have any information in this case, call Austin Police. This, by the way, is Austin's 51st homicide of 2022. In Fayette County, a wild vehicle theft spree left deputies running around trying to catch up with the thief. The sheriff's office says there was a stolen pickup truck in Ellinger after 6 in the morning on August 30th. That stolen pickup was then found at a Fayette County EMS building in LaGrange, where the thief traded it for an EMS pickup. The EMS vehicle was tracked and found abandoned at a property in the Ruddersville area, where he then stole a tractor. Deputies later found the abandoned tractor and the suspect hiding in a cattle pen. 38-year-old Franklin Marshall from Houston was charged with burglary of habitation, among other things. A manhunt is underway for a gunman who killed an off-duty Harris County deputy constable on August 28th. That deputy was identified as Omar Urson with the Harris County Constable's Office Precinct 3. Investigators say he was just returning home from getting dinner for his family. Shelby Rose from our sister station Fox 26 in Houston has the story.
Yes, so far there is no information on who killed this deputy, who has since been identified as Omar Urson with the Harris County Constable's Office Precinct 3. It all happened here on the roadway of Madera Run Parkway around 6:30 yesterday evening. Constable deputies responding to a shots fired call. And when they arrived, they found Urson inside his vehicle, which was crashed into a tree. He sustained a gunshot wound and was later pronounced dead at a hospital. Witnesses on scene say they saw a dark, newer model 4-door sedan with tinted windows firing into the driver's side of his car and driving away. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez says the shots appeared to have been fired as both vehicles were in front of Westlake Middle School. But as for a motive or what led up to this shooting, that's still unknown.
The complainant in this case, he's a 37-year-old male. He was returning from getting dinner for his family when he was shot and killed. The reason for the shooting at this point is unknown. We don't know if it was road rage. We don't know if it has something to do with him being law enforcement, and we're still trying to determine that.
And again, there is no suspect information, so investigators are calling upon the residents in the Groves area, asking them to check any kind of surveillance footage, and if you do have some, to call Crime Stoppers immediately. Reporting in Atascocita, Shelby Rose, Fox 26 News.
A Houston neighborhood is devastated after a gunman lured his victims outside by setting fire to their homes before fatally shooting 3 of them. Shelby Rose also has the story about the suspect who was shot and killed by police. Police say the suspect was a former resident of that complex who had recently been evicted.
It's senseless.
The call came in just after 1 o'clock Sunday morning. First responders arriving to a fire at a housing complex on Dunlap Street. That turned into a deadly shooting.
This suspect, unfortunately, and very sadly and very evilly, set fire to several residents, laid wait for those residents to come out and fired upon them.
4 people were shot, 3 ultimately succumbing to their injuries. That suspect was reportedly still firing when HPD arrived and was shot and killed by an officer. The other tenants blindsided by the scene unfolding.
It all happened so quick. The house was on fire. I mean, I opened the door. After all the gunshots stopped, I walked outside. And I'm like, oh, the whole place is on fire. And I opened the door. And I mean, there was just smoke just billowing out of that door that's open.
The owner of the property confirming the suspect, a black man in his 40s, was in the process of being evicted. But no one had any inclination something like this would happen.
I've lived here many years and I've seen people, that pass away or whatnot, but nothing like this, nothing like this.
And we have the Red Cross here now taking care of those tenants that were displaced in the fire. The owner of the property telling us 10 units are a total loss. But he says the biggest loss of them all was his manager, Donald Hall, who he says was one of the victims. The other 2 tenants of the property.
I mean, I'm a pretty strong guy, but it's just losing people that you know.
Shelby Rose, Fox 26 News.
And finally, we head to Fort Worth, where a teenager and a child are dead and a toddler is injured following a drive-by shooting. David Centendry from our sister station Fox 4 in Dallas brings us that story.
We're seeing violent crime on the rise across the country, and unfortunately we're seeing violent crime here in Fort Worth at numbers we don't want to see.
2 children, a 5-year-old boy and a 17-year-old boy, killed off Steel Dust Drive in this northwest Fort Worth neighborhood Sunday afternoon. An 18-month-old boy injured. It fits the description of a drive-by shooting.
That an unknown number of suspects drove to the location in a vehicle and fired upon a group of individuals in the front yard, injuring the 3 victims, and then left the scene.
Fort Worth Chief of Police Neil Noakes says a group of people were in the front yard during the shooting. All 3 victims were taken to a hospital.
Thankfully, the 18-month-old sustained minor injuries and is expected to survive.
Neighbors wonder what led to the shooting.
We didn't think we'd have this type of activity in this neighborhood. This is a first.
Carla Galbraith's 13-year-old grandson was home when gunfire blasted through the neighborhood.
I thought someone was banging on my window. That's how loud it was.
They didn't see who's responsible, but now they see nearly 24 shell casings marked as evidence in the street.
You're not safe at home. You're not safe at the store. You're not safe at church. You're not safe anywhere. So, you just have to be aware of your surroundings.
The Fort Worth Police Department is going to put every resource necessary to this investigation to do everything we can to bring those responsible to justice as soon as possible.
Chief Noakes says while violent crime is always horrible, it hurts even more when kids are victims.
I think of a 17-year-old who should be looking at his senior year, graduating and starting his life. I think of a 5-year-old who should be starting kindergarten.
David Centendry, Fox 4 News.
Thank you for watching this Fox 7 Austin Crime Watch. Our exclusive Crime Watch stories run each Monday on Fox 7 Austin News at 9. Again, to learn more about the stories featured today, you can look for the links below this video. You can also find more stories on our website, fox7austin.com, or subscribe to the Fox 7 Austin YouTube channel.